Join your host, Maddie Roche, as she brings you into a community of fee-only financial advisors who are successfully building profitable businesses that serve the next generation of clients. Learn from innovative advisors whose unique stories will inspire you to dream big and take action on your goals. Are you ready to live your best life and help your clients live theirs? Then you're in the right place.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of XYPN Radio. I'm Maddie Roche, your host. I'm excited to have XYPN member Therese Nicklas, owner of Wealth Coach for Women, a fee-only firm in Rockland, Massachusetts, on the show today. Therese has spent over 40 years in this industry, having spent time working in the insurance business with employee benefits, and having spent a substantial stint at LPL. It wasn't until 2016 when Therese decided to sell off her commission business and open up her own fee-only firm. Today, Therese serves the people she knows she can help the most. Women and women in transition. And she does it as a fiduciary. She's a certified money coach and brings a level of accountability, encouragement, and guidance to her nearly 40 clients that is quite unique. Having worked through her own money scripts, she has a deep understanding of how to help other women do the same, making her a perfect teammate for her clients. Therese explains her 4-month, 6-month, and 12-month coaching packages and how she works tirelessly to support her clients to achieve financial comfort and empowerment. Therese has seen a lot. She's held her clients' hands through 3 major market downturns and has firsthand knowledge of what it's like when clients want to pull out of the markets when times get tough. She brings a level of veteran experience that is impressive and offers a little bit of something for everyone in this interview. If you want to become inspired by an industry veteran, this show is for you. Avocado toast, selfies, a mountain of student loan debt. Gen Y is anything but traditional, and with over 75 million people, it's a population you don't want to ignore. Learn more about how to serve this unique population in our guide called Attract and Profitably Serve Millennial Clients in Your RIA. Discover 3 key ways to tap into the millennial market and 6 things that they want from their financial advisor. Visit xyplanningnetwork.com/millennials for your free copy. You can find any of the resources we mentioned during the episode at xyplanningnetwork.com/262. Also, be sure to go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to join our private group just for XYPN radio listeners. It's a community of advisors we've all been looking for that's there to provide support when we need it the most. Best of all, it's free. I encourage you to check it out. Again, that's xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP. Without further ado, here's my interview with Therese. Hey, Therese, welcome to XYPN Radio. How are you?
Wonderful. How are you, Maddie?
Good. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I think you have so much to offer our listeners, and I want to jump right in. Tell us about your firm, the firm that you have built over these years.
Well, thank you for asking. The name of my firm is the Wealth Coach for Women. We're located in Rockland, Massachusetts, which is just south of Boston for anybody that might know the area. And typically I work with women that are between the ages of, say, 40 to mid-60s, Maddie, and they're going through a big change. They generally have a master transition going on that's sometimes through no fault of their own. They might be going through a divorce or contemplating divorce. Some of them are widows. Some are changing jobs. They might have been aged out of their career or position. And I also work with clients that are finding themselves raising their grandchildren. So these traumatic life events usually create a lot of uncertainty around their finances. So my role with them is to help them navigate all these changes, give them a level of clarity so that they can move forward with confidence and certainty that they're going to be able to maintain their lifestyle and stand on their own 2 feet, be okay.
Wow. That's a beautiful target market that you're serving. Therese, did you get into this business wanting to work with women that are kind of going through these changes, or was this a client base that kind of came to you once you started?
Well, that's a great question, Maddie. It's a little bit of both. So I've been in financial services my whole career, which is over 40 years. And about 20 years ago, I transitioned to asset management and financial planning. And that was at a time, my broker-dealer was an insurance company, so everything was insurance-driven. And, I didn't know any different. So when we wrote a financial plan, it was really geared towards selling insurance. And there was something about that that kind of bothered me. I always felt disingenuous, writing up this plan. And I thought these plans are a great opportunity to give people clarity and direction, and we're not using it properly. So I kind of morphed my position, even through different jobs that I've held. Once I left the insurance broker-dealer and I went to LPL Financial, which is, does not have any product or, anything like that with their brand name on it. So they were completely unbiased, which was great. So it was a completely different world. And then through all of those changes, it seemed like women were coming to me. I just had a good rapport with them. And I noticed that a lot of women had more uncertainty around financial issues than men. And I don't know if men just had like a natural confidence, or it was, the times or the age bracket or what. But it seemed like I'd sit down with a female who, say, was recently widowed or divorced, and we'd have a conversation. And the first thing she'd say to me, like as we were wrapping up, she'd say, "This is the first time I feel heard."
Wow.
That she would go to the meetings with her husband and she felt like everything was directed at him. Like she was almost like this, anomaly sitting in the room. And as, I think about that and watch, advertisements and things like that. And it's like everything is geared towards the man. And this isn't right, because not only are women important just because they are, but women are the biggest consumers. And yet everything was male-centric. So I made a decision to focus on the women's market, to focus on the needs of women. And as I was doing that, just things that I had forgotten about kind of kept coming back to me.
Interesting.
And one of those things was my mother's sister, who went through a divorce when I was a little girl. And at that time, you never heard the word. That was the first time I heard the word divorce. It wasn't very common. And it really left her destitute. Wow. So I saw one thing that I have a very clear memory of. I was probably 5 or 6 years old. And my grandfather had just passed away. So my grandmother was a widow. She had never worked outside of the home, so she had her own financial issues that she was dealing with. And my aunt made the announcement that she was getting a divorce and she was leaving an abusive situation. So, the kids, of course, were all shooed out of the room, but the house was small and you could hear everything that was being said. And I remember my grandmother and my mother saying to her, "You can't leave him. Who's going to take care of you? This is crazy. Why can't you just work it out?" Oh. As a little girl, nothing really made sense to me, except this is going to sound horrible and I don't want it to be, but I was always afraid of that uncle. He never did anything to me. There was just something about his energy that made me very uncomfortable. And when my aunt said she was getting a divorce, and when that was explained to me, all I could think of was, I'll never have to see him again.
Wow. Yeah. And what understanding at that age did you have of the mechanics of, the financial situation of a divorcee? I imagine very little, but how did that impact you? Yeah.
Well, how it impacted me in many ways. I saw my aunt struggle. So now in my brain, divorce equals, financial ruin, even as a little kid. And she was moving around all over the country. And I didn't know why. I mean, I was, things weren't really explained. Parents didn't explain things to a 6-year-old, So my aunt was moving all over the place because she was trying to find work. And she needed a job that was going to allow her to, take care of her family, because she didn't have any financial support. Once the divorce happened, you had no restitution. You didn't take somebody back to court. You just put up with it. And she didn't even have a high school diploma. So finding work was really difficult. And when I was about 12 or 13, she ended up having a complete mental breakdown from all the stress. And she was never the same after that. And there was a lot of repressed memories. And as I was working with women, all these things kept coming back to me. Wow. And, I just felt that I wonder if my aunt had either somebody like me or me to help her, if her life would have been different.
Definitely. Definitely. So talk to us, Therese, about how you help women in these situations. I'm always interested in what does the relationship look like when you have such kind of a fragile client?
It's an interesting relationship. We have to lead with the gentle hand. A lot of tissues.
Oh,
But as my role has morphed over the years, and I just keep trying to add value and add services and processes that are really going to benefit my clients on a deep level. One of the things that I instituted was money coaching. So when I'm working with somebody in this situation, or, in which is most of my client base, we start with the money coaching so that we get into the behavioral finance side of things. So it's almost like asking the question, why did you put up with, not getting a sufficient settlement or things of that nature? And in doing that, if I'm working with somebody that's at the start of a divorce, or like they're at that stage where they're thinking about it, but the thing that's holding them back is money, which happens a lot, when I can work with them at that level and help them understand their finances and what it is that they need and what they should be asking for and what they deserve, it gives them a high level of empowerment. And because a lot of times, especially if they weren't the ones handling the finances, they really don't understand what they need. And part of that is a money block, because it's a I am not worthy mindset. So when I can help them break that down, then we can ask for, construct an ask that's going to make sense. And generally we get a yes. I haven't yet got a no. And then we move forward with traditional financial planning so that they understand that what it is that they got in their settlement, how we're going to, get that to last their lifetime and maintain their lifestyle. So it's a coaching relationship. It's traditional financial planning plus coaching. And through that coaching, I take them step by step through, like, this is where you are, this is where you want to be, and this is how we're going to get you there.
Wow. What tools, if any, do you use during that coaching component?
Well, I'm certified as a money coach, so I use the tools that I got from the certification process. And then I use traditional financial planning tools. The tool that I use is Right Capital. So far I've been happy with it. I mean, most of my clients are not like high net worth where they need something really sophisticated like an e-money. So the Right Capital seems to be a good fit because it does break things down in simple language, which I like.
Wonderful. And in this money coach certification, what is that certification? When did you get it? And tell the listeners about it.
I got it. It was before I started my practice. And it was after I got the CFP. I think it was 2012 or 2013. It's been a while. And I got it. I had been looking for something that took financial planning to the next level, because as I was just using like traditional financial planning tools, the thing that concerned me is they'd walk away with their plan and I had no way of knowing if it was implemented. So I started to implement a coaching process so I would be there to hold their hand, so that it wasn't like they come in and a month later I hand them the plan and they walk away. This was a relationship, and this was, a period of time that we're going to be working together. And even with that, I wasn't seeing any dramatic shifts in their behavior or any real enthusiasm over making the changes that we had, written out in the plan that they said they wanted. So when I got into the money coaching, that was after probably 3 or 4 years of searching for something, and I didn't even know what I was looking for. I found several people that had different programs, and the one that I felt was the best fit for me was through Deborah Price and the Money Coaching Institute. She's really the pioneer for the process. And one of the things that they do in the whole training program is they put you through the money coaching core process. That's part of your training, is that you have that experience.
Wow.
And then it was either 6 or 9 months. It's like a certain length of time that you go through the training, and then you have to do money coaching, you have to have a couple of people to be like your test case, basically. And you write up a case study. And until you pass that case study, you're not certified.
Wow. What a curriculum.
It is. There's a little bit of therapy in there, although I cannot call myself a therapist because I'm not, I've never been trained, as a therapist. But what I found very interesting is, I always felt that I was really good at handling money, which I am. And I thought, this is great. Yeah, I'll go through this exercise. This is interesting. And the things that I uncovered about myself were unbelievable. And it made such a transformation in me that I thought, I've got to share this with the world.
Wow. Can I ask what some of those lessons were?
Sure. So, growing up, my model was my grandmother, my father's mother, who she could squeeze a quarter and make it cry. And she never, ever complained about not having enough, even through the Depression. She just had an abundant nature about her. And she just felt confident that no matter what, she and my grandfather would be able to provide what her family needed and then some. And these are blue collar people. My grandfather was a barber. My grandmother was a seamstress, and she used to take in laundry and sewing and, do whatever she had to do to put food on the table. And just watching her ease around money and the way that she would talk about it and be very comfortable around it she was like one of the only people I ever knew that was like that, especially someone who lived through the Depression. I always felt that I had a good handle on money. And going through the exercises, I realized that one of the reasons I never charged enough, I had fear around asking for money, like even at that time, like asking clients when they'd say, well, what do you charge for financial planning? And I'd be like giving them this little answer in a Minnie Mouse voice. and I realized that it was because when my first job, I was working for my father, and my father significantly underpaid me. So I got it in my head. I mean, these are like subliminal subconscious thinking that I was not worthy.
Wow.
And when I was 12 when I started working with him. He was a beautician. He owned his own business, and I would go in and like sweep the floor and do little things. But he'd pay me $5 for 8 hours work. My sister got 10 because she was older. Yeah. So my uncle, my father's brother, who also was a hairdresser, he was like my grandmother as far as money goes. But he hired me. He needed help, and my father at the time didn't really need, me. He had my sister. So I went to work for my uncle, and he would pick me up in the morning, take me out to breakfast, and it was great. And then, he'd ask me questions like, you're earning money. What are you doing with your money? And it wasn't being nosy. It was educational.
Yeah.
And he talked to me about when he started his business at 22 years old, the first thing he did was open up a retirement account.
Wow.
Which people didn't do then. I mean, we're talking, in the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
And he would very openly and very comfortably talk to me about how he managed money. And, so I learned a lot from him. And he paid me $15. Plus, I got tips, and his clients were very generous. So sometimes, I was 14 years old. I could come out of there at the end of the day with $50 in my pocket, which at the time was a lot of money.
Yeah.
So my dad moved his business, and he decided he wanted me to work with him again. So he didn't tell me, but he told my uncle. So one day my uncle didn't show up to pick me up, and I didn't know what happened. And I find out I'm working for my father. It's like, it'd be nice if somebody ran this by me, but I didn't have an option. So I go to work with my father. Oh yeah, I told Charlie, you're working with me now. Okay, Dad, that's great. So I go to work. He hands me $5 at the end of the day. I was making 15, right? I said to him, $5. I said, Uncle Charlie paid me 15. He said, well, you're not worth that much. Yeah. Seriously. And so he said, I'll pay you 10. Oh. So I lost 1/3 of my income. And I didn't realize until I went through the money coaching exercises, because one of the things that they do is they go back into like your money memories.
Right.
And I didn't realize that's where all of my like lack of worth thoughts came from.
So fascinating.
So I became aware of that, now I can shift that thinking. It's like you take something and you put it out on the table and you're looking at it and you say, oh, that's what that is.
Have you seen a real change in your ability to talk about your value and ask for the sale when you're working with clients?
I do. And the other thing too is if a client says no, it's okay with me. But I want them to make a decision. And I tell them that. I said, right now we're going to make a decision and no is okay. But think it over is not. I want a decision, because if it's not going to be them, then I got to move on and find someone else. And I've raised my prices, and I had no problem doing that. But I don't think that would have happened had I not gone through the money coaching core process. And one of my clients, woman that I've been working with for many years, she had so many issues around money. And after the third year of telling her that she was earning about half of what other people that were, she's a nurse, and what other people that were in her industry were earning, with her years of experience and everything, finally I got her to ask for a raise. And I coached her on it so she didn't go in, cold. And she got a raise. It wasn't much, but at least she got a yes. I said, I don't care if they're giving you 10 cents an hour more. It's the fact that they said yes. Now we're going to go look for another job. Totally. So I helped her with the resume. I helped her prepare. And she ended up getting a job where she doubled her income.
Oh, Therese.
Because she was so underpaid. I mean, she found a job where they were paying her what they were paying nurses, after 20 years of experience.
Wow.
But want to know what the best part of that was?
What?
That shift helped her with her self-worth issues.
Totally.
So when she was in the lunchroom one day, and this nurse that she worked with was kind of obnoxious and made a crass remark, and had done that all the time. I don't know if she thought she was funny or what the story was. So my client turned to her and she said, I really don't want you to talk to me like that anymore. I really don't like it. And the woman turned to her and she goes, oh, you sensitive, like in a nasty tone. And my client said, you're right. I am sensitive. And I don't want you to talk to me like that anymore. So she called me right after that incident happened. And she said to me, I want you to know something. She said, I am 47 years old. That's the first time in my life I ever stood up for myself.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I think that's such a testament to the power of people to encourage one another, but the power of therapy and coaching and financial planning all kind of tied up in one example. That there's so much to this idea that if we can get over thinking we know everything and thinking our world is functions in a vacuum, once we allow someone or even just a new relationship to come in and awaken us or enlighten us in any area of our lives, we can our whole lives can change. And I think that the story you just shared with us is a real example of that. What
Absolutely.
A totally meaningful relationship to have had with a client.
Yeah. I mean, it's really special. But I'm driving the bus. They have to choose to get on.
I like that.
They have to choose to get on, and they have to choose to do the work.
Right.
Because if they don't do the work, nothing changes. And I tell them that right in the get-go. Whether it's traditional financial planning or it's financial planning and money coaching or just plain money coaching, that if they're not going to buy in and really dig in and do the work, nothing is going to change. Because when I got my certification as a money coach and I got the CFP designation, it didn't come with a crystal ball and a magic wand. We had other things that we learned, but we didn't get those tools. So it's up to them to do the work.
I think that's a really good point, and I want to ask you about that this concept of being coachable. I hear about it a lot. I am attracted to teammates who are coachable. I consider myself coachable. I've been told I'm coachable, but from coaches and from planners, I hear this a lot, that they're looking for people that are coachable, that are trainable, that understand that they are not the end all be all of understanding of this world. And I think that it's an ego thing. I think it's it's really, do people have the mental space to accept that there may be more? How do you tell that in a client? And I love that you are able to say no and accept no at this point in your career from clients, but you're probably interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you.
Absolutely. Well, the relationship is very personal, as you can tell.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, it's almost like you want to ask yourself, do I want to date this person?
Right. Right.
Because it's that intense. And, if I'm spending, some of my packages, I have a 4-month package, a 6-month package, and I have another one that goes a whole year. Do I want to spend that much time with someone who isn't coachable? Mm-hmm. Number one, if they're not coachable, they don't appreciate me.
There you go.
And it's just takes up too much of my bandwidth.
Right.
To deal with that, because what happens, and this has happened early in my career, I had a husband and wife, they had a lot of contentious issues around money. One, she loved to spend, he was working double time trying to keep up with her. And he came into me one day, I was trying to help them figure out their debt and trying to get the answers, just the basics, like, well, what do you owe? You want me to help you with the debt? What do you owe? And they constantly give me like these rounded numbers. It's about this or it's about that. I said, well, where are your statements? And I get the deer in the headlights look. So I said, well, I can't help you if you're not going to provide the data so that I can crunch the numbers and come up with a game plan. So they left. And about a week later, he stormed into my office with a shoebox and literally threw it at me. And in the shoebox were all of his statements. He said, you wanted these, you figure it out. And I looked at him. I picked up the box. As politely as I could, I handed it back to him and I said, no, I think that, I don't need to be treated this way.
Yeah.
I think you need to work with someone else and probably a therapist.
Wow.
I was mortified that somebody would do that. But that's what happens when you're working with somebody they've got such a thick shell around them. Totally. And it's because part of it is they're not coachable, but they don't want to see the truth. Mm-hmm. It's like, what was that movie? I can't think of the name of the movie. It was a Tom Cruise movie with, I forget the other guy's name. And one of the lines in it is, you can't handle the truth.
Oh,
was it Gene Hackman? What the heck was his name? I can picture his face, and I can't think of his name. But I'll never forget, it was like the Navy, these people in the Navy or whatever, and he said, you can't handle the truth. And that's a lot of people that are not coachable, they can't handle the truth. And if they can't handle the truth and nothing changes for them because they're not doing the work, they turn around and blame you. We become the whipping boy, and I have no use for that anymore. Right. Nobody can pay me enough money to make me the whipping boy.
Wow. And listeners, this is what 40 years of experience in the industry lets you get to say. I love that. I think a lot about that there's kind of this subset of people that are available for this kind of awakening. And then there's that 90% of the rest of the world that just won't ever, don't have the tools, don't have the space, don't have the knowledge or to be accessible for this kind of growth. And so that's the challenge of financial planners, is really to identify the people that do understand the value or sense the value enough to find you online. And so many of you are inbound marketers and, folks contact you before you contact them, but there's still this interview process that you have to go through to really find if this is the right relationship. And I'm wondering, do you work a lot with couples, or is it primarily with the woman of the couple?
It's primarily, but I do work with couples. I also work with business owners. I do 401k plans for companies and do financial wellness for those companies. But primarily, I'd say 90% of my business is female only, usually a single woman.
Wow. Okay. And going back to when you worked at LPL, you mentioned LPL was kind of the last place you worked before you started your firm. Talk to us about your ability to have these kind of meaningful relationships at LPL and what triggered you to leave LPL and start your own firm.
Well, what triggered me to leave, and as far as having this type of relationship, that wasn't a problem because, they are a hybrid broker dealer. So you have the fee only side, not only, but the fee side, as well as the typical brokerage with commission side. So it's almost like a split. So I did all my financial planning. Of course, that was on the fee side. And then, if I was selling an annuity or something like that, that was on the brokerage side. What made me make the switch was actually I met I think her name was Stacy. This is years ago when XY was brand new. And I met them at an FBA conference. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't realize that's how you got into XY, is you ran across us at a conference?
I ran across you at a conference. I also ran across NAPFA at the conference, which I had never heard of that before. So, I'm like, fee only, and they're explaining how it all worked and everything. And I thought, oh my God, where the hell have these people been all my life? And it was just, you didn't need a Series 7. You weren't under the FINRA umbrella as much. I mean, it was just a different type of operation. And I liked the idea of holding myself out as a fee-only advisor and as a fiduciary. So I said, oh, I really like this model. And then I met at the same conference, I met one of your members, Brittany Castro.
Yes.
And Brittany was giving a talk, and she was talking about, how she made the shift. So then I talked to her after the fact, and then we worked together for about 6 months where she helped me navigate, getting myself prepared to get into this direction. And then I joined XY, and they took it from there. But that was what made me make the shift. And I was in an office that was great group of guys, really good office. It was a bunch of advisors that were all working under one umbrella, and that was through LPL was our broker dealer. And what was difficult for me was I wanted to specialize in helping women, and I had been doing that, but I couldn't hold myself out as any kind of a specialist in anything because I was under another company's umbrella. So all of my marketing and everything had to be done through them. And everything was very male-centric. It was an office of, I forget how many advisors that were in our office, and then they had offices all over the country. And I was the only female advisor. So everything was even like the colors on the website looked like a pinstripe suit.
Fun.
Navy blue, white, just looked like a pinstripe suit. And I thought, it's very, very male driven, everything, which was fine because, it was all men and me. But for me to hold myself out and try to distinguish myself and do any kind of really different social media marketing or, do the things that I wanted to do, I couldn't do it in that environment. So once I left and I could launch my own website and I could, do my own thing, it really made a huge difference.
Beautiful. So talk to us about that. You launched in November of 2016 with XY. What was that process like, having spent a lot of time in this industry? What was it like to draft your own ADV or to work with the team
hell.
to draft?
It was absolute hell.
Now, wait.
And not because of XY, it was because of the state that I'm in.
You're in a tough state.
Oh my God, it's awful. It's awful.
Having come in with a lot of experience, I'd suspect that you look at your ADV part 1 and 2 a little bit differently, and you probably feel a lot more comfort with the language in it and things like that. So talk to us about what the drafting component of that was like and submitting it with Massachusetts. And if you can recall any back and forth that you had, I think it's advantageous to share that with the listeners, knowing, of course, that the landscape is different day by day. Really.
Oh, it's minute by minute. It's different.
Minute by minute.
It depends on who you get assigned to as your officer or whatever they call them. Well, one of the things I couldn't do was I couldn't use Betterment.
Of course.
They wouldn't allow me to use Betterment, although previous advisors did, but then they stopped it. So they felt that they had this thing in their head. They couldn't see the value of somebody going through Betterment and paying an advisor. even though you try to explain to them that, you're guiding the person and everything else. But it's very interesting, and I don't know if Massachusetts is, exclusive in this feeling. They really don't want us to make money. They really don't. I mean, I've been to meetings and they pretty much come within an inch of saying, we don't want you to make a living.
Wow.
And it's, what they have in their guidelines, like, charging within, I forget how they put it now, but it has to do with reasonable, that your fees are reasonable. Well, who decides what's reasonable?
Right.
The client decides. If the client doesn't think it's reasonable, they're not going to hire you.
They won't pay. Right.
They won't pay. So, if I was, just out of college and I decided to get a CFP and I, hadn't even met with one client yet, and I charge X, and somebody else that has 20 years experience, they're supposed to charge the same.
Right.
I mean, that doesn't make any sense. But because, that's just their mindset that, your fees should be reasonable. And well, who decides what's reasonable?
How did you get around it?
I'm trying to remember now. I don't remember how I got around it. I think what I did was I reached out to some other folks that were, fee only, and I kind of used the fees that we were charging in my previous office. I think I used those as kind of a guideline, and I felt like if other people were using those rates, then I could use those rates. And I think I put in a range.
Yep.
I think that was how I did it, but it's really tough, and it's something that, I wanted to talk to you or maybe offline about. That it's difficult for them to understand the concept of a subscription.
Right.
That's really tough in Massachusetts, so I haven't quite figured that one out yet.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if anybody else has navigated their way around that, but
yeah, I know there's
things
always
like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of conversation in the member forums about Massachusetts in particular, and how to work around that and what advisors have done. It's always advantageous for folks to look at one another's ADVs, but recognize, of course, what Therese just mentioned is that if you get a different regulator, it just is what it is. They may not see that. There's lots going on at XY in terms of what we can do to educate consumers and regulators alike on the subscription model. We had Kingston Holman, one of XYPN's compliance consultants, on the podcast a couple months ago talking about, kind of the role as a former state regulator, what his approach was and the perspective that regulators have in terms of just wanting to protect the citizens and knowing, of course, that we're in this industry that has such a bad reputation that anything that's foreign or that they don't understand, they probably suspect that there's, ill intention behind it. So it's our job as being in this industry and this side of the industry to help educate those regulators about why the subscription model actually is the best for some folks. And I'm interested, Therese, in these packages that you mentioned. You have a 4-month, a 6-month, and a 12-month package for your clients. Talk to us about what those packages are, what they include,
Sure.
and what the relationships are like.
So if I'm working with somebody that's like, say, a recent college grad, which a lot of times my clients will have a child that maybe, just graduated or they just came out of an advanced degree, they have a lot of college debt, and they want somebody to give them some guidance, then I will do, something that might take a few hours, and I can charge them an hourly rate, and I send them on their way. But for most of my clients that are involved in especially a big transition, they need more of me. Yeah. So with the 4-month package, I'm working with them for 4 months from point A to point, they hire me on a certain day and 4 months later, our relationship or at least our arrangement is done. Mm-hmm. So in the first 4 weeks, I'm doing the money coaching core process most of the time. And then I meet with them twice a month for the next 3 months, or if it's a 6-month package, the next 5 months. And while we're working together, after we get through with the core process, then we're doing traditional financial planning. If I'm working with somebody on the 6-month, usually that's somebody who they may have more of a need. So they might be at the beginning of their divorce stage or maybe like just started. and they need help figuring out what to ask for. They need, with their settlement. Then they need help finding an estate planning attorney, maybe a CPA. So there's a lot of other professionals that they want me to guide them to, getting the right people. And then I facilitate those meetings. So that's a lot more involved than with the 4-month relationship. That's usually somebody who just got divorced. They have their settlement. Now they're trying to figure out what to do with it, how to budget, how to be prepared to maintain their lifestyle going forward.
Fascinating. And how many clients are you serving? And if you have only a 12-month package, is there any relationship kind of post that 12 months?
Oh, yes. Well, what happens a lot of times is once somebody is done with the financial planning arrangement that we've put together, is they may do an hourly consult, like, maybe 3 or 4 times a year, or any time that they have to check in. If something changes, I want them to call me. Often if it's a quick call or just a little, something that we need to work through, I don't charge them for that. But if it's something that's going to be almost like a rebuild and, starting all over again, then, we may look at either another package or, they may just do some sort of almost a retainer. Like they say, I want 4 hours of your time, and then they just pay for that.
Awesome.
And then the people that are doing the year round, usually those are people that are a business owner that seems to be the one that wants more of an ongoing consult relationship. Mm-hmm. And they're more involved where they may have, their CPA, or if they don't have an estate planning attorney, or they might be trying to figure out an exit strategy. So there's things that are a little more complicated, so that you're not going to get that done in 4 to 6 months. That's something that's like an ongoing type of thing. And I have one woman right now that she came into an inheritance, and she's single. She's only responsible for herself. This is more money than she even literally knows what to do with. So she wants to know how she can make a difference in the world, and what she wants to do is start a foundation. Wow. So we're planning around how do you start a foundation. So there's a lot of moving parts to that. There's a lot of other professionals that I have to help her pull together and navigate the right questions. And that's a year-round thing. And that probably will be ongoing. And then once she has everything up and running, she may do something like a couple of every month check-in, or a quarterly check-in, or something like that.
And are you managing assets for these clients?
I manage assets, but it doesn't, I do for some and not for others. It all depends on the client. So I don't have an asset minimum. Mm-hmm. I have a lot of clients that I work with just on the planning and coaching side. And then if they have assets and they want me to help them with them, that's great. But I don't make that as a requirement.
Great. And do they pay that separately, or is that
They do. And that's why, I'd like to figure out how to do more of a retainer or, subscription type thing, so that they're just paying once and it covers everything. But I haven't figured that out yet.
Yeah. So are there set prices or variable prices on those packages depending on complexity?
The packages are pretty flat rate. Okay. And then if they're doing an hourly, then that does vary depending on complexity. Mm-hmm. And as far as assets, it generally is like everybody else does. It's pretty much, the rate is based on the assets under management, whatever the size of the portfolio is.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you started back November of 2016, 3.5-ish years ago, did you come in with clients?
I did.
Talk to us about kind of your client growth over those years. What did you start with? Where are you at now? And how has that been to build a client base? It's
been tough. It really has. It's been a struggle, especially with a market like this. It's really been difficult. I had clients that I had a large practice, and I sold most of it because most of it was brokerage or annuities. And if I'm going to be fee only, I couldn't take that with me. I didn't know how to convert the annuities over to a fee only model at the time. I don't even think we had fee only annuities available. So I ended up selling a good portion of my business. So I was really almost starting over again.
Wow. Who did you sell your business to?
I sold it to a colleague in my old office.
And I'm always interested in this. How do you sell a business?
Well, it was interesting because he came to me, And I don't even remember how we started the conversation, but I think it might have been that we're all working together in this office, and we used to have compliance training and things like that, and continuing ed, like they did it right in the office, which was really convenient. And one of the segments that we did was on creating an exit strategy and creating a like a buy sell, one of those, like if you get hit by a bus, what's going to happen kind of situations.
Yes.
So we happened to be sitting next to each other. And after the fact, we went out for lunch one day, and he said, I'm really concerned if something happened to me, what's going to happen to my family? Would you consider doing a buy sell with me just in case something ever happened? I said, yeah, sure, absolutely. And this was before I had thought of moving out of the firm. So we set that up. And then when I decided to move out of the firm and go fee only, I did a lot of research about how do I manage the brokerage side of the business and everything else. And I'd spoken with Scott and, other folks on the XY team. And they said, I think at the time they gave us a year to, be fee only. I don't know if it's any different today. So I think it might have been Scott that suggested, because he asked me about if I had a buy sell, and I told him that I did. And I think he might have been the one that suggested, why don't you sell that portion of your business?
Wow.
And that was how it came together.
Awesome.
And I sold that I had started working with XY, I think it was August of 2016. And then I sold that part of my business in October. So I was preparing. And then I was approved right before Thanksgiving, I think it was. I think it was the day before Thanksgiving, I got the letter that I was approved.
Oh, I love that.
I was in my old office. I stayed there through the end of November, and then I had to transition the clients that I didn't sell over, and all but one came with me, which was good. But then since then, some of them didn't stay, but then I got others. So as far as growth, like assets under management, that kind of comes and goes. That's about the same as when I switched over. But as far as my planning, which is the thing I focus on the most, which is why my AUM hasn't really grown. My planning clients, I have quite a few more, and these are planning clients that generally they renew every year, that we do something together, have some sort of a maintenance package.
Wow.
After the fact.
How many of those clients do you serve?
About 35.
Wow. It's a great foundation.
Yep.
Great base. So what do you think you're going to be doing with your firm over the next, say, 10 years?
The next 10 years?
However long the horizon is. What is the future of your firm? Are you thinking about you want to hire folks? Do you want to continue to be the main financial planner? Talk to us about what you envision for your future.
Well, I envision bringing on maybe a younger advisor, somebody that's not like brand new, but someone who wants to go in the same direction that I'm in. Wants to focus on the women's needs like I have, and that will be in a position financially to be able to buy me out when I decide I want to retire. But I don't see myself fully retiring. I see myself maybe retiring from asset management, but I can't see myself not planning.
Yeah.
I really can't. I mean, I would love to create like online type programs, something that would be more evergreen, that I don't necessarily have to be, hand to, nose to the grindstone all the time. But as far as not working, I really can't see myself doing that.
I love that. I talked to Joe Morgan just a couple weeks ago, maybe a month or two ago, and he said that this is his retirement plan. He hopes to be doing this really through his retirement, that he loves this work so much. It's so natural. It's so fulfilling that he doesn't really ever envision him not doing this. I think that's so cool about our industry.
Yeah, it is. And I think it's just, creating that space and designing your firm in a way that you can do it, until you're wearing a toe tag if you want to.
Yeah. I'm interested. You started this, later in your career, having had a really impressive career in the industry. Do you wish you had done this earlier than later?
I do. Like most people, I have my regrets, and looking back, I wish I did things differently. I wish I knew more when I got into the industry, about the industry. I wish I knew more about the options. I think if I had known what my choices were, it wouldn't have been so difficult. But I did everything the hard way.
Meaning,
I really did. Well, I was recruited. I had been in, financial services. As I said, I was property casualty insurance. I did that for a number of years. And then I was doing employee benefits. And there was a person that I met who, used to come into our office all the time. And he was a life insurance salesman. And he had said to me one day, several times, he said, you really would be good at financial planning and asset management. And I looked at him like he had two heads. I didn't even know what it was. So he recruited me for the broker-dealer that I went to in the very beginning. And, he literally sold me a bill of goods. I didn't realize that I was self-employed when that happened. I thought I was going to be working for him. The way that he presented it sounded like he was like bringing on an additional person into his firm. And I found out the hard way that was not the case. And that was my own stupidity. And had I known more, I didn't know that there were companies like, say, MetLife and other companies, insurance companies, that had a training program where they would train you when you'd get a salary for a few years until you built up your book.
Yeah.
I went out, I had nothing. And I was literally building my business, shaking hands and kissing babies.
How all the best businesses are built.
Yeah, but it was a time when that really wasn't the best thing to do, but
right.
It's what I did. And it's like, well, I'm here now. What do I do?
And so in present day, what keeps you up most at night about kind of the strength of your firm, where you're going and how you're doing it?
What keeps me up at night? Like, what is my biggest worry? Well, when we have a market like this, I can't sleep. Yeah. I take what I do very seriously, and knowing that I have a person's present and future lifestyle in my hands is difficult at times like this.
What do you do to stay sane through it?
I don't know if I have stayed sane through it.
Oh, what an honest answer.
I mean, I've been through this 3 times now. I mean, I started in July of 2001. So September 11th, the towers, I was on the phone with the training people at my broker dealer. And I was having this call that I had scheduled a long time ago and waiting for this call because I was getting trained on, how to do certain things, which was really important. And the guy, I'm on the phone with him, and he said, "Oh, my wife keeps calling me." He said, "Let me, can I ask you to hold a minute? She never does this. Something must be wrong." So I said, "Okay." So he gets back on the phone and he said, "My wife said there was a plane that just hit the World Trade Center in New York City." I said, "Really? That's strange." So, and then we continued with our conversation and we got off the phone, and I said, "Oh, I got to go check this out." I turned on the TV, and 2 minutes later, the second airplane hit. And it was like, this is no accident. First, we thought it was an accident. Then the second one hit. It's like, this is no accident. So right after that, the market was closed down for a week. It's like everything came to a screaming halt. Here I am, brandy new, trying to build a business. And I'm like, what do I do? What do I do now? I mean, never mind me. I mean, it's like the whole world was crazy. So we got through that. I mean, and once we rebounded pretty quickly. And then we have 2008. So that was a lot of fun.
What was 2008 like?
2008 was just a nightmare. It was like watching a train wreck.
Shoot.
It really was. I mean, you had Lehman Brothers going out of business. You had all these big banks and big financial institutions that were too big to fail, and they're doing all these bad things. And, so of course there's another black eye on the industry. And what happens is they just tighten up all kinds of regulations and make the honest people make their job harder. So that was very difficult, and it's hard to tell people stay the course or don't do anything. Right. But in my experience, looking back, I had some people that demanded that they go to cash. They didn't care, what I was trying to explain to them. I could show them charts and graphs up the wazoo. They didn't care. And I had people, I was using a lot of model portfolios at the time. Mm-hmm. So I had several people in like the same model. So I had the opportunity to really track the difference between staying the course and going to cash. And the people that went to cash, like today, even today, looking at their portfolios, they never rebounded like the people that either made a few little tweaks or left things alone.
Wow.
You never catch up.
Do you talk to your clients today about that decision and the difference that you've seen as the result?
I do. In fact, I put together a video. I mean, it's definitely not polished. It's pretty raw, but I had to get the information out there.
Right.
And I felt like I could write it, but I really felt like my clients need to see the white of my eyes. They need to see my expression. They need to see how this is, how I feel about all of this. Mm-hmm. And I just put together a video and I wrote up a little brief description and sent that out. I did that, I think it was Monday.
Wow.
So to get, just to get the word out. And that's like one advantage of being an RIA versus being in a broker-dealer, because I'd probably be retired by the time I got it back from compliance.
Oh, that's the truth. That's the truth.
I mean, we can grow old and gray very quickly. I know people, friends of mine that are still in the BD world, and they wrote up a letter that they want to send out to their clients, and they're still waiting.
Amazing.
And this is critical. You've got to get in front of this. You've got to, get to your clients as quickly as possible to the best of your ability.
Yeah. And your passion, Therese, and your knowledge is so evident while I talk with you, and it always has over these years. And you just must be such a vital component to your clients' lives. I just trust that so much. Do you have any final pieces of advice of folks thinking about launching their own firms to be able to serve the people they want to serve?
That's a great question. I think my advice is I look back on my path and look back on starting my firm, as I said, shaking hands and kissing babies, or at least, starting the practice. That was very painful and very stressful, and I really didn't need to put all of that stress on myself.
Interesting.
I think I would say to my younger self to find another firm that you can partner with. Even if you're a paraplanner or something where you can get a salary, something to keep you going as you build your practice. And then once you're built, have an arrangement that it's understood that once you're built, everything you bring in is your own, so that you're not like a captive player or anything like that.
Right.
I'd also recommend that, if at all possible, that you avoid the insurance-based broker-dealers, because what I found with them, I would highly recommend that they go down the RIA path. I highly recommend that. One of the things with the insurance base is they're always taking care of themselves. I don't care how much they say they're unbiased and objective, it's not true. And your compensation is a little bit better if you sell their product versus somebody else's. And, I just don't agree with that at all. I think that you should be able to recommend to somebody whatever is in their best interest, period, end of story. And I believe that firmly.
Yeah.
So that would be my recommendation, is that you find a firm, preferably an RIA, whether it's state registered or SEC, it really doesn't matter, but make sure that that person has, is ethical, is of the same standard that you want to be. You want them to be above you, not beneath you. So
beautiful
you have
advice.
something to aspire to, that you want to be inspired to aspire.
Oh, I love that. Be inspired to aspire. Therese, thank you so much for this really candid interview. I so appreciate your authenticity and your drive and really your understanding of this industry as someone with the number of years in it that you have. You've spoken with such clarity and confidence about the importance of this work and the kind of impact you can have. And I've endlessly admired you since I've met you. And I'm so honored to have interviewed you today. So thank you so much. I know our listeners will have learned a lot. Have a safe and wonderful rest of your day. Listeners, I hope the same to you. And I'll see you back here next time.
Well, Maddie, this is one industry where you can do very well financially while doing good for others.
Really good advice. I hope folks find it to be an industry that they want to stay in and help change. I know that we're experiencing so much change right now, and we as a network and the community have impacted some change in the industry. I can't wait to see where we go over the next coming years.
No, and I think that for anybody that is fairly new to the industry, and if what's going on right now is shaking you to your core, it's understood. It's understandable. I mean, it's a difficult position. And rather than quit, I'd recommend that you look for another office that you can partner with, because there's strength in numbers. Sometimes being out there as a solopreneur is very difficult, especially in times like this. And it might make sense for you to partner up with someone and see if you can support one another and, prop each other up in these difficult times.
Great advice. Thank you so much, Therese.
Thank you. You have a great day.
You too. Avocado toast, selfies, a mountain of student loan debt. Gen Y is anything but traditional, and with over 75 million people, it's a population you don't want to ignore. Learn more about how to serve this unique population in our guide called Attract and Profitably Serve Millennial Clients in Your RIA. Discover 3 key ways to tap into the millennial market and 6 things that they want from their financial advisor. Visit xyplanningnetwork.com/millennials for your free copy. Be sure to join our VIP community at xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to hang out with other XYPN radio listeners, ask questions for future mailbag episodes, and finally, to find a community of like-minded financial advisors. Thank you so much for joining me today. We'll see you next time.
You are not alone, and you are not crazy. It's scary starting, building, and growing your own financial planning firm, and that's why we put together a free private community just for you, the Cutting Edge Financial Planner. Go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP or text XYPN Radio to 33344 and join a network of thousands ready to change the lives of Gen X and Gen Y clients.